Some of the biggest UK brands are quietly rewriting their recipes, and most people won't notice until the first bite tastes different. Your favorite crisps, biscuits, ice creams, even everyday staples are about to become unfamiliar versions of themselves. Not because customers demanded a change, but because companies are cutting costs, swapping ingredients, and hiding it behind the label new and improved. In today's video, we're counting down 12 UK brands changing their recipes in 2026. And the closer we get to number 1, the more surprising and unsettling these switches become. Because the top item is something almost every household buys regularly, and the change isn't coming someday, it's already happening. 12. Renshaw chocolate modelling paste. At first glance, this one feels harmless, almost unnoticeable. Renshaw is one of those names that UK bakers have trusted for decades without even thinking twice. It's the brand you grab automatically when you're making birthday cakes, decorating cupcakes for a school event, or putting together something special for family celebrations. It has always carried that reputation of being safe, familiar, and consistent. For years, their chocolate modelling paste has been a staple. People rely on it because it handles smoothly, shapes easily, and delivers that rich chocolate taste you expect. When you buy something like this, you're not just buying an ingredient, you're buying reliability. You assume it will work the same way every single time. But heading into 2026, that familiar product is being relaunched with one of the most deceptive phrases in the food world: new and improved recipe. On the surface, that sounds like a positive upgrade. It sounds like the company listened to customers and made it better. But in reality, improved often means something very different behind the scenes. It can mean cheaper ingredients being swapped in to offset rising costs. It can mean cocoa being reduced, fats being replaced, or stabilizers being adjusted to stretch the product further while keeping the packaging looking exactly the same. And with something as sensitive as chocolate, even the smallest tweak is never truly small. A slight change in cocoa content can affect the richness. A change in fats can affect how it melts in your hands. Adjustments in sugar or emulsifiers can change the texture, making it harder to roll, less smooth to shape, or quicker to crack once it sets. That's what makes these quiet recipe changes so unsettling. They don't come with bold warnings. They don't announce what was removed or replaced. Instead, they hide behind cheerful branding, hoping you won't notice until the moment you take a bite or try to work with it. For bakers, these details aren't minor. When you're making something for your kids, your friends, or an important celebration, taste and texture are everything. And when a trusted staple suddenly becomes a different version of itself, it feels like a betrayal disguised as an upgrade. And this is only the beginning, because the next brands on this list involve everyday products that millions of people consume without a second thought, making the changes far more disturbing. 11. BrewDog Punk IPA. For a lot of people in the UK, BrewDog isn't just another beer brand. It's become part of modern culture, the kind of name you see everywhere from supermarket shelves to pub taps. And at the centre of that identity is Punk IPA, a drink that many fans swear they could recognise instantly, even blindfolded. The bitterness, the citrus hit, the familiar finish, it's something people have come to expect as consistent. That's why a recipe change here matters so much. Because when something is this iconic, people don't just drink it casually, they build trust around it. It becomes their default choice, their reliable favourite, something they buy again and again without thinking. But BrewDog has confirmed that Punk IPA is being updated with a new recipe rolling out nationwide. And whenever a brand announces a reformulation, the first question should always be why. Sometimes companies frame these changes as improvements. They'll talk about freshness, balance, or making the flavour better than ever. But behind the scenes, recipe updates are often tied to something else entirely. Rising ingredient costs, supply pressures, or the need to standardize production at a larger scale can all push brands to tweak what goes into the product. And with beer, even small adjustments can completely alter the experience. A change in hop varieties can shift the aroma. A tweak in malt balance can change the sweetness. Even the way bitterness lingers can feel different. To the casual drinker, it might seem subtle, but to loyal fans, it can feel like something familiar has been replaced with a copy. That's what makes these changes so strange. They don't always come with a clear explanation of what was altered. The branding stays the same. The can looks the same. The name stays the same. But the taste can quietly drift, leaving people wondering whether it's their imagination or whether the product they loved has been slowly rewritten. And this is where the bigger pattern begins to show. It's not just one brand here or there. It's a wave of reformulations happening across the UK, where companies adjust recipes quietly while hoping customers won't notice until it's already normalised. Because if an iconic drink like this can be changed without most people realising, the next products on this list get even closer to the everyday foods sitting in your kitchen right now. 10. Borough Broth Company. This one feels especially unsettling because it hides behind something people associate with comfort and health. Borough Broth Company has built its reputation on being wholesome, organic, and premium. The kind of brand you buy when you want something cleaner, something nourishing, something you can trust. Broth is marketed as one of the simplest foods imaginable. Slow-cooked, natural, almost old-fashioned. That's why it's so easy for people to assume it's immune from the kind of quiet recipe manipulation happening elsewhere. When you see words like organic and authentic, you expect honesty. You expect stability. You expect that what you bought last year will be the same thing you buy next year. But this product has been reformulated, with the company promoting it as a new, more authentic recipe. And that word, authentic, is doing a lot of work here, because whenever a brand announces a recipe reboot, it means something has changed. And the question is always what and why now? Broth might seem simple, but it's actually incredibly sensitive. A slight adjustment in salt levels can change the entire flavour. A shift in spices can make it taste sharper or flatter. Changes in concentration can make it thinner, less rich, or more processed. Even if the label still looks premium, the experience in the bowl can feel noticeably different. And the uncomfortable truth is that recipe changes like this often happen because companies are navigating rising costs and ingredient pressures. Chicken, herbs, spices, and long simmering processes are expensive. Reformulation can be a way of keeping prices stable while quietly altering what you're actually getting. That's what makes this wave of changes so frustrating. Consumers think they're paying for the same trusted product, but behind the scenes, brands are adjusting formulas, sometimes in ways so subtle you only realize after you've stocked your cupboard again. For people who buy broth for health reasons, for recovery, for family meals, these changes aren't just about taste. They're about trust. When a comfort staple shifts without transparency, it leaves you questioning what else is being quietly rewritten in the foods marketed as better for you. And as we move further up this list, the next brands aren't niche or premium. They're everyday names that sit in millions of homes, meaning the impact of these recipe changes will be impossible to ignore. 9. Burts Snacks. Crisps are one of those everyday pleasures people don't overthink. You open a bag expecting a familiar rush of salt, seasoning, crunch, and flavour. Burts has been one of the UK brands known for doing it properly. Bold flavours, a more premium feel, something that tastes a step above the basic supermarket packet. That's exactly why changes here matter. Because when a crisp brand builds its identity on flavour intensity, even a small shift can feel obvious, and Burts has confirmed that by 2026, their crisps are being reformulated to meet new HFSS compliance rules. HFSS stands for high fat, salt and sugar, and the UK has been tightening regulations on how these products are promoted and placed in stores. On paper, it sounds like a public health move, but for consumers, it often translates into something much simpler. The recipes get quietly altered. When crisps are reformulated to become non-HFSS, the first thing that usually changes is the seasoning. Salt levels may drop, Flavorings may be reduced or adjusted, oils can be swapped. The result is that the crisp you remember as punchy suddenly tastes softer, cleaner, almost muted, and this is where the frustration sets in, because brands rarely say outright, "We reduce the flavour to meet regulations." Instead, they position it as an improvement, a modernisation, a healthier step forward. The packaging stays familiar, the name stays identical, but the taste becomes a slightly different version of what people loved. For loyal buyers, that shift can feel like losing something small but meaningful. It's not just about crisps. It's about the creeping reality that everyday foods are being rewritten in the background, driven by cost pressures, policy changes, and corporate decisions rather than what consumers actually want. And the scariest part is that once these reformulations become normal, people stop remembering the original taste. The new version becomes the standard, and the old one disappears without anyone ever really consenting. Because if a crisp brand can change its core flavour profile under the radar, the next item on this list shows how even treats sitting in your freezer are being transformed in ways you will definitely notice. 8. Feast ice cream. Few things feel as instantly familiar as a classic ice cream bar. Feast is one of those products that has lived in UK freezers for generations. The taste is tied to summer afternoons, corner shops, family treats, and that unmistakable combination of vanilla, chocolate, and crunch. That's why changes here are so striking. When an ice cream brand like this shifts its recipe, it doesn't just affect flavour, it affects nostalgia. People don't buy Feast because they want something new. They buy it because they want the exact same experience they remember. But Feast has announced what it calls its biggest transformation ever, including an improved recipe. And this isn't a tiny adjustment. The company is changing the vanilla base and adding real hazelnut in the centre. On paper, that might sound exciting, even luxurious, but the reality is that altering something this iconic can completely redefine what people expect. The vanilla may taste richer, or it may taste thinner depending on the reformulation. The chocolate coating can feel different. The added hazelnut changes the balance, shifting it away from the simple classic bar that millions grew up with. And this is what makes these recipe transformations so complicated. Brands frame them as upgrades, but they also risk alienating the very people who made the product a staple. When you change a treat tied to memory, you're not just adjusting ingredients, you're rewriting a familiar comfort. There's also a broader industry reality here. Ice cream is expensive to produce. Dairy prices fluctuate, cocoa costs rise, supply chains shift. Adding a new ingredient or changing a base recipe can sometimes be less about delighting customers and more about restructuring the product to manage costs while still marketing it as something better. Consumers are left with the same wrapper, the same name, and the assumption that nothing has changed until the first bite feels unfamiliar. That moment, when a childhood favourite suddenly tastes slightly different, is exactly what makes these quiet reformulations so unsettling. They don't feel like innovation. They feel like something being taken away and replaced with a new version you never asked for. And the next brands on this list move beyond treats and into everyday foods people rely on for health, ethics, and routine, making the recipe shift even harder to ignore. 7. Beyond meat. Plant-based food has always been built on trust. People don't just buy it for taste, they buy it because they believe in what it represents. Healthier choices, ethical eating, sustainability, a better future. Beyond Meat became one of the most recognizable names in that movement, and for many shoppers, it's been the default option sitting in the chilled aisle. That's why a reformulation here carries a different weight. When a product is already designed to imitate something else, even small ingredient changes can completely alter the experience. Beyond Meat has confirmed that its Beyond tenders are being reformulated and will land in the UK in January 2026. The company is positioning it as an upgrade, promising better taste, improved texture, and a more satisfying bite. But whenever plant-based brands reformulate, it usually means the ingredient list is shifting in ways consumers don't always understand. Different binders, altered fat ratios, new stabilizers, changes in seasoning. These products are complex, engineered foods, and the balance is delicate. A tweak meant to improve chewiness can make it feel rubbery. A change in oil can affect flavor and aftertaste. Even the smell in the pan can become unfamiliar. And there's another layer here: cost and competition. The plant-based market has exploded, but brands are under pressure to produce cheaper, more scalable products. Reformulation can be a way to streamline manufacturing while still marketing it as innovation. For shoppers who rely on these foods as staples, the change can feel personal. You find something that works for your lifestyle, and then suddenly it becomes a slightly different version of itself. The packaging stays the same, the branding stays bold, but the experience shifts. This is what makes the 2026 wave so unsettling. It's not always about removing a product, it's about quietly reshaping it until the original disappears. And as we climb higher, the brands on this list become even more everyday. The kind of items people buy weekly without thinking, making the changes harder to escape. 6. Meatless Farm. At this point, a pattern is starting to feel impossible to ignore. It isn't just one or two brands making small tweaks. Entire categories of food are being quietly rewritten, and plant-based staples are right in the centre of it. Meatless Farm is one of the UK's best-known homegrown names in the meat-free space. For many people, their signature burger became a reliable choice, something you could throw on a grill or pan and feel like you were getting a familiar, satisfying alternative. It wasn't just about replacing meat, it was about having something consistent, something you didn't need to question. But the company has confirmed that for Veganuary 2026, the signature burger is being reformulated again, with promises of a juicier bite and improved texture. And on the surface, that sounds appealing. Who wouldn't want better taste? Who wouldn't want a more convincing burger? But reformulation always comes with a formulation. Hidden question: what had to change to make that possible? With plant-based products, texture isn't magic, it's chemistry. Achieving that juicy bite often means adjusting oils, binders, emulsifiers, and flavor systems. Even small ingredient swaps can affect how it cooks, how it smells, and how it sits on your tongue after the first bite. For loyal customers, this is where frustration creeps in. You finally find a product that fits your routine, your health goals, or your ethical choices, and then the company quietly alters it, turning it into something slightly unfamiliar. And this is exactly why so many people are starting to feel uneasy about what's happening across UK food shelves. The brands call it innovation, they call it improvement, but for consumers it can feel like instability, like nothing stays the same long enough to trust. Before we go further, if you're finding these changes as unsettling as they sound, take a second to support the channel. Hit like, subscribe, and stay with us, because the biggest brands and the most shocking reformulations are still ahead. And next we move into one of the boldest snack names in Britain, where the change isn't just noticeable, it's a complete shift in what people expect from the flavour. 5. Doritos. Doritos has never been a subtle snack. It's loud, intense, aggressively flavoured, and that's exactly why people buy it. No one opens a bag of Doritos expecting something gentle. They expect the punch of seasoning, the sharpness of cheese, the salty kick that makes it instantly recognisable. So when a product like this gets reformulated, it isn't just a minor adjustment. It risks changing the entire identity of what it is. PepsiCo has confirmed that Doritos is being reformulated to become non-HFSS, meaning it will no longer fall under the UK's high-fat, salt, and sugar restrictions. And that might sound like a health win on paper, but for consumers it usually translates into one thing: the flavour profile is being dialed back. To meet these standards, brands often have to reduce salt, tweak flavorings, or adjust ingredients that give snacks their addictive intensity. That bold hit people associate with Doritos doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from carefully engineered seasoning blends, fat balance, and sodium levels that make the crisp taste powerful. When those elements are altered, the experience can shift immediately. The crunch might feel the same, the bag might look identical, but the flavor can taste flatter, softer, less addictive. And what makes this even more unsettling is how quietly these changes happen. There's rarely a warning that says, "This will taste different now." Instead, you might see a small badge about being healthier, or nothing at all. The brand relies on the fact that most people will keep buying out of habit. But loyal snack fans notice, because when you've eaten something for years, your brain remembers the exact flavor. A reformulation isn't just a new recipe, it's the original being replaced. And this is where the story gets bigger than crisps. It's about the slow reshaping of everyday foods under pressure from regulation, cost-cutting, and corporate strategy, while consumers are left adjusting without ever being asked. And just when you think it's only the big global brands doing this, the next change comes from a premium favorite that people assumed would never need to be touched. 4. Kettle chips. Kettle chips has always sold itself as something different, not just another crisp, but a premium one. Hand-cooked, thicker cut, more flavor, the kind of snack people buy when they want something that feels higher quality than the standard packet. And with flavors like cheddar and onion, the taste is the entire point. People choose it because it's bold, rich, sharp, and instantly recognizable. It's not meant to be subtle. That's why the words "improved recipe" should immediately raise eyebrows. Kettle chips has confirmed a recipe change to its cheddar and onion flavor, and as with so many brands on this list, the framing is cheerful, improved, better, updated. But in the world of food manufacturing, improvement often means reformulation under pressure. Dairy is expensive, cheese flavorings are costly, ingredient sourcing shifts, and when companies are trying to maintain profit margins without raising prices too high, the recipe becomes the easiest place to make adjustments. For a flavor like cheddar and onion, even a tiny tweak can completely change the experience. If the cheese notes are reduced, the crisp can taste less rich. If onion seasoning is adjusted, the balance can feel off. Changes in oils or additives can affect how the flavor hits your tongue, how long it lingers, and whether it still has that addictive sharpness people associate with it. The unsettling part is that most shoppers won't know what changed. The bag looks the same, the branding stays familiar, the name stays identical. You only notice when you open it and something feels muted. And that moment is exactly what so many consumers are experiencing more often now. Favorite products becoming slightly different versions of themselves, quietly rewritten while companies hope you'll adapt. Because crisps might seem small, but they represent something bigger. If a premium brand built on flavor intensity is adjusting recipes, it suggests that no product is truly safe from the pressures reshaping UK food shelves. And next, the list moves away from snacks and into something far more widespread, where recipe changes aren't happening in one product, but across entire supermarket ranges at once. 3. Tesco. This is where the scale becomes impossible to ignore, because it's one thing when a single brand tweaks a product quietly. It's another when one of the UK's biggest supermarkets starts updating dozens of recipes at once. Tesco has confirmed that it has rolled out more than 50 new and improved recipes across its frozen food range. And frozen foods aren't niche. They're everyday staples, the meals families rely on for quick dinners, weekly routines, and affordable convenience. That's what makes this so significant. When Tesco changes recipes, it isn't affecting a small group of loyal fans. It's affecting millions of households in one sweep. The updates are framed as positive, better taste, better quality, improved ingredients, but frozen food is one of the most cost-sensitive categories in the industry. Ingredient prices fluctuate constantly, and supermarkets are under pressure to keep products affordable while still protecting margins. So recipe changes become a quiet balancing act. A sauce might be thinner, seasoning might be reduced, a cheaper substitute might replace a more expensive ingredient. The packaging stays familiar, but the flavor can shift just enough for people to notice something feels different. And because these are own brand staples, shoppers often don't have a clear comparison point. They simply realize that the meal they've bought for years tastes slightly altered. That's what makes mass reformulation so unsettling. It doesn't just change one product, it rewrites what normal tastes like across an entire freezer aisle. And next we move to one of Britain's most familiar chocolate snacks, where the change is so dramatic it affects what can legally be called chocolate at all. 2. Nestle Toffee Crisp. This one is the kind of change that feels almost unbelievable until you realise it's already happening. Toffee Crisp has been a familiar British snack for decades. A simple, reliable combination of biscuit, caramel, and a chocolate coating that people have grown up with. It's the kind of treat you buy without thinking, because it has always been exactly what it claims to be. But Nestle has made a change so significant that it affects what the product can legally be called. The coating on Toffee Crisp has been altered to the point where it no longer qualifies as chocolate. Instead, it is now described as a chocolate flavor coating. That might sound like a small wording difference, but it signals something much bigger. Because when a company moves away from real chocolate, it often means cocoa content has been reduced, and cheaper fats or substitutes have been introduced instead. And that is something consumers will taste. Chocolate flavor coatings tend to melt differently. They feel waxier. The cocoa hit is weaker. The richness people associate with a classic chocolate bar becomes flatter and more artificial. What makes this unsettling is how quietly it happens. The product looks the same, the name stays the same. Most shoppers won't spot the shift unless they read the fine print or notice that something about the bite feels off. And this isn't just about one bar, it reflects a wider trend across the industry. Cocoa prices have risen sharply, and brands are responding by reformulating rather than openly raising prices. Instead of saying, "This is more expensive now," they quietly change what goes inside. So the treat remains on the shelf, familiar in appearance, but subtly transformed in substance. And if that feels like a betrayal, the next and final item is even more shocking because it involves an iconic UK biscuit brand, where the change is rewriting a product almost every household buys. 1. McVities. And this is the one that hits the hardest because it involves a brand that feels untouchable in the UK. McVities biscuits are more than snacks. They're lunchbox staples, tea time classics, childhood favourites that generations have grown up trusting. Products like Club and Penguin aren't just biscuits, they're part of British routine. That's why this change feels so shocking. McVities has begun replacing real chocolate coatings on some of these iconic biscuits with what is now being labelled as chocolate flavour coating instead. Just like with Toffee Crisp, that wording is not cosmetic. It's a legal signal that the coating no longer meets the standard required to be called chocolate. And in practical terms, it usually means less cocoa and more substitutes, cheaper fats, altered ingredients designed to cut costs while keeping the product looking the same. For consumers, the difference is immediate. Chocolate flavour coatings often taste flatter, feel waxier, and melt differently. The richness people remember is dulled down, replaced with something that feels more processed and less authentic. What makes this so unsettling is that these are products almost every household buys regularly. Club biscuits, Penguin bars, things parents pack for kids, people grab with a cup of tea, treats that have always felt familiar, and now, without any major warning, they are being quietly rewritten. This is what 2026 is starting to look like across the UK. Brands keeping the packaging, keeping the name, keeping your trust while changing the ingredients underneath. Before we wrap up, if this list surprised you, make sure you support the channel. Hit like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who does the weekly shop, because these changes affect all of us more than we realise.